Hi, I'm Karen Lewis, the host of Confessions. I thank you all for tuning in, watching Confessions on again tonight, another Tuesday. And you know, we come on here every Tuesday with a different victim, survivor, and a thriver to speak about domestic violence and what they have gone through with their lives. And everyone has already known what I've gone through with losing my daughter, seeing my baby, lay in a casket holding her own baby. That would always be heartbreaking for me for the rest of my life. So I deal with it by assisting other victims of domestic violence. I will be an advocate for domestic violence for the rest of my life. And as you all know, every week I'm on here, you see my smiling face, asking for money. I need donations every single day of my life to help victims escape their abusers. I'm still asking for donations again today. I need you to donate. Like I say, it could be your mother, your sister, your daughter, your cousin, your niece, each, your grandchild. So we need donations so we will always be able to help victims escape their abusers. And you know how we do that, by purchasing bus, plane, and train tickets to get them relocated to another state so that they can start a fresh new life for themselves or for them and their children. So please go online to theangelhouse.org and click the donate button and make your donations, or you can go ahead and do it through Cash App and make your donations to KRAT number 3 and send your donations to us that way. And know that every time you send a donation in, you are helping save someone's life. And for that, I will always thank you, because I cannot do this by myself. I need everyone's help to assist these victims to start a fresh new life for themselves. And God bless you all. And tonight, our show is going to be a little bit different. You all are used to having victims on here telling their story and about their past and whatnot, things like that. So we have a minister here today with us, and Dr. Crystal Eason will tell her story a little bit, and she will tell how she's able to help people. She is a life coach, she is a therapist, and we thank God for her being able to minister to victims, knowing some of the things that she's gone through in her life, and where she's educated, very well educated, to help victims in this area in their lives and to tell them which way to go from there. So where you all are used to me always letting the victim tell their story, I'm going to let Dr. Crystal tell a little bit about her story, but then we're going to ask her questions on assisting victims, okay? So thank you very much, Dr. Crystal Easton, for coming on Confessions and talking with us and helping us learn more about domestic violence, how to escape, and ways we can do better with our lives.
Thank you, Karen, for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you.
Anything that I can do to help another woman live her best life, that's what I'm called to do.
Okay, thank you so very much. So we know that it happened to you in your early 20s.
Yes.
So you want to tell a little bit about that?
Yes. Let me see. I met a young man after after leaving a relationship, my son's father. And growing up on the east side of Detroit, tough, growing up with brothers, you think if someone hits you and you hit them back, that it's not necessarily domestic violence, because I was the type, because of how I grew up, I might hit first, because I grew up in a domestic violence household for a few years. Okay. And watching my mother go through that. And so, of course, promising myself, that's something I'm not going to go through. So when he began to holler at me, I became afraid. But he was an abuser. We fought each other. And it didn't dawn on me that I was actually being abused, being taught to fight. Just didn't realize that that's what was happening until one day I was at church. I was just going to church. I didn't grow up in church, so I did not have church experience. And he came in the church looking for me.
Wow.
And it frightened me. Like, if he would come into church and look for me, clearly something is wrong. And so it was like something came over me. And I decided I needed to get out the relationship. And I had a 79 Thunderbird. And I
I
said, me
remember
and this
those.
Thunderbird is going to run him over and keep fighting for my life and keep going. And that didn't happen. It was wintertime, and my car got stuck. And it was about 3 men just so happened came outside and grabbed him because he was trying to jump in the car with me. But because of my own anger and rage at that time, I knew that I needed to do something because one of us was going to die. And so that's part of the story. And I ended up giving my life to Christ and haven't looked back. And that was the only violent relationship I had been in. But it scarred me emotionally for a period of time until, I got myself together.
Well, one thing you told me even before we came on the show, leaving that relationship caused you to draw closer to God and surrender your life to the
Yes.
Lord.
Yes.
Lord, so how long ago has that been?
That has been actually 30 years ago.
Oh, wow, praise God.
I was 23, and I knew I had a son who was 2 years old.
Okay.
And for me, for my decision to try to run him over with my car rather than just leave the relationship was a toxic decision. And I didn't, of course, I wasn't thinking. So I'm thinking the only way to get out this relationship is he got to go, and it's not going to be me.
Okay.
And so having that moment where God met me, he saved me because I could have had a different outcome.
Okay.
And so that's when I began my spiritual journey and getting close to God and discovering who he said I was,
Okay.
rather than the way I had been living previously.
Okay, and after that abusive relationship, you had no more abusive relationship?
No more physically. No more physically.
Okay.
But discovering that even coming out of a physical abuse, but you were also emotionally abused.
Yes.
So then attracting men who were not emotionally available, and then just looking for love in the wrong places. Because just because you leave, of course, you're saving your life, but then there's a healing journey that needs to take place.
Amen. Yes.
And so sometimes we believe, oh, I'm out of that, but then the healing don't happen, and you still end up in situations that are unhealthy, that are toxic, that can cause you to still lose your life because you're not living to your fullest potential.
Yes.
And so once the healing journey began, then I began to do differently.
Okay. Okay. Well, like I say, I thank you for speaking the truth about your life, because every time we give our testimony, I believe that nobody knows if their testimony will help anybody or not. And having this show, I know that people's testimonies are helping people. Different people from Iowa have contacted me,
Yes.
St. Paul, Minnesota, California, all to find out about the show, and if they can't be on the show, can they please be in Confessions too, the book. So I thank God that more and more people are reaching out, speaking out about.
Definitely. I mean, we need to. That's how we save each other.
Right, right.
We become victorious through our testimony and through the things that we've gone through, and not being ashamed of your story. So
Yes.
I'm very open. I was in a relationship a couple of years. We lived together. My family got involved, and it just was an ugly situation. But what I discovered is that something I witnessed as a child also, and having to jump in fights to help my mother, and you just never think that you'll end up in the same thing, but
Right.
because of our environment, we tend to repeat what we see.
Yes.
And so as a result, I was in that type of relationship, but once I got out, that was it.
Okay. Okay.
And God has just been my source, so that I don't go back to who I was, because even though he was violent, there was something in me that was in that relationship that was not whole, that was toxic, that was sick, that also needed some healing to even end up there and stay there.
Yes, yes. Well, what is it that you would tell victims that's being released from prison and starting a fresh new life for themselves on their outcoming from prison? What would be your suggestions to them so they won't end up with the same type of man? Abuser, because it could be a man that was abused too. So
I would tell women to take the time to get to know who you are. and release yourself from any guilt, any frustration, any anger that may still be lingering. Take your time before you get involved with anybody and really fall in love with yourself. And that's not to say that you don't, but the journey of self-discovery and your purpose and discovering what that is as a result of everything that you've gone through, I would say focus on that. And then to also get some help. Help is not just because you're dysfunctional, it's because you're trying to get to the next level. And sometimes you need people to help you get there. And so I would tell a woman getting out of prison to take her time and get to know herself each day that God gives so that she is whole and healed, and then move into relationships.
Okay. Yes. And women that's still in a relationship with their abusers, what would be your advice for them to set up an escape plan?
Well, my advice, I have counseled many women. My advice, of course, is to go. But I do understand there needs to be a plan, and privately, someone that you trust, that you can let them know that you are making this plan, so that when it's time for you to make your escape, you'll have support. Any money that you may have or that you're getting, begin to put some up. Even if it's, hey, let me go get a second job to do it. But you definitely have to plan it, because you don't want to have to depend on the man. A lot of times women stay because they don't think they can survive without their the person that's abusing them. But you can. You can make it.
Yes.
You can do it.
I'm a witness.
Me too. Listen, you can do it. Get your plan together, but don't wait too long, because it's a matter of life or death. And sometimes we want things to be convenient for us to escape, and it's not convenient. Just go.
Yes.
And it's not about things. It's not about material things. It's about going after peace and going after the life that you deserve.
Okay, and a lot of women say that they stay because of the children. But to me, you're hurting your children more by staying in that situation, by allowing your children to see you black and blue.
Definitely.
Oh, and to see you trying to heal your wounds, and they see you putting alcohol or stakes on your eye or whatever to make yourself feel better and heal. So those babies are seeing that. So
definitely, I mean, we're teaching them that being abused is okay.
Right, exactly.
We're teaching
Thank you.
them that it's okay to be disrespected. We're teaching them that it's okay to live less than what we were called to live. We are teaching them that it's okay to be manipulated. We're teaching them that it's okay to feel guilty when you're the victim.
Yes.
A lot of times women feel guilty, and one of the things we do as women, as nurturers, is make up reasons why they behave the way that they behave. And so you're teaching something that they will repeat.
Yes.
I mean, statistics show that women or men repeat the cycle of abuse when they've been exposed to it in childhood.
Right.
And
right.
I can attest to that.
Yes, yes. But see, children in the home, they're seeing all of this abuse. And this is what I speak to the children in the elementary schools about, because we have to start from little bitty on up. So you're seeing all this abuse going on at home. You're 7 and 8 years old. You coming to school pushing a little girl into the locker or pulling her hair. That's not cute. And a lot of the teachers want to say he's doing that because he likes you. That's not the truth. He's seeing that abuse at home, and he doesn't know how to take it out on anybody. He knows he can't go up and punch his father for hurting his mother, so he could be frustrated at school and taking it out on that little girl
Bullying.
he's pushing into the locker. Right? All of it is a form of bullying, which turns into abuse. So I tell parents all the time, especially fathers, you're abusing your wife in front of your children. So are you telling your daughter it's okay for another man to abuse her when she gets her mother's age?
That's exactly what he's telling
Yeah.
me.
So.
Even though we'll see, we grew up with a do as I say, not as I do.
Yes.
Well, that's a myth.
Yes.
And so we do what we see. And so with children, the anger, having experience even in counseling children, a lot of their pain is from the household.
Yes.
And so they come to school frustrated, they come to school angry, and they take it out on somebody.
Yes.
Either the teacher or the kids, or it's internal. You know, they suffer emotionally, they can't learn. And so they begin to deteriorate internally
Yes.
based upon that because of the instability. And so it affects kids in many ways.
Yes.
Even if they're not bullying, they are self-afflicting.
Right.
And so in self-affliction, rather it's depression, kids are suffering, you know, in ways that a lot of times we don't recognize because we don't expect that kids would be suffering to that degree.
Right.
And so we overlook some of the behaviors that the kids have. And so it's just a trickle down effect
Right.
of domestic violence. I can remember as a kid going to camp, and I got in trouble because I bit a kid. And I probably got mad, and what I know to do when you get mad is hit, bite, or kick. It's not talk, you know. So I remember getting in trouble, but that's what I saw. Whenever there was a loud voice in my household, no one knew what was going to happen next.
Yeah.
And so as a kid, or even growing into teenage years, if it was some hollering, I would get anxiety because I didn't know if that meant there was a fight or what was going to happen next. And so growing up in fear, you know, causes you to act out.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's what happens with a lot of our kids who's been exposed.
Yeah. Well, do you believe that ministry can help victims?
I believe, of course, I believe ministry can help victims. First of all, I believe in God.
Yes.
And I believe in the power of God. And I believe no matter what your situation has been, if you surrender to Him, that you will be helped. But I believe church ministries can help by creating a safe place for women who are suffering so that they can even bring it up to say, I'm in an abusive situation and I need help.
Well, I find too, a lot of the pastors are telling the victims that they have to stick with it because it was their choice to marry unequally yoked. How do you feel about that?
Okay, let me try to be. Well, first of all, I have a book that's called Unequally Yoked with a question mark.
Okay.
The Bible does not say be abused.
Yes.
First of
Nowhere.
all. And of course, we know biblically speaking, God does not like divorce, but there's also some discussion in the Bible about the heart being hardened.
Yes.
And that person who's being the violent person's heart is hard. And so I don't know of any pastors, I belong to Second Ebenezer Church, Bishop Edgar Mann and First Lady Van, that would even ever agree to such a statement.
Oh, there are a lot of honest pastors and teaching pastors that are really teaching the Word of God, but then we have some that are not.
Well, here's the thing. There are pastors who I believe can teach the Word of God, but that doesn't necessarily qualify them as therapists or clinicians to help people who may be suffering in a stronghold. Now, we know what the Bible says about strongholds.
Yes.
However, how do I counsel you so that you can feel conviction enough about who you are and who you are to God to make a different decision?
Yes.
And so they have to be careful because ethically, we are not supposed to counsel in an area we are uneducated in.
Exactly.
And so we have to be very, very careful on what we tell people.
Right.
And then you can't tell a person what to do, even being in that situation.
That's correct.
Because it has to be their decision. So you have to be trained on how to maneuver through such a discussion or counseling session with a woman that's hurting. But you can say to her that she deserves to live, that no one should be hurting her, and that she should take care of herself.
Right.
So you can say those things. But at the same point, any point of crisis is an opportunity to change.
Yes.
And if a woman is not ready to do it, she's just not going to do it.
Now, see, that's exactly what goes on because when they come to the Angel House, if they're not ready to relocate to another state to start a fresh new life for themselves, we don't force them.
Right.
Because God doesn't force Himself on anybody.
Absolutely.
So why should we force ourselves on anybody? So when the victim is ready and she knows she can't take anymore and she needs to relocate, then that's what we do. do, we help get that victim to another state so she can start fresh. So I really, I really hurt for a lot of these victims because some women don't know when it is enough. And sometimes enough could be just like my daughter, deceased.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is it? What are statistics? Every 2 minutes, a woman dies at the hands of a violent perpetrator.
Right.
And so you don't know. And I think that's why I'm so grateful for this show because we have to be educated. And unfortunately, when we love ourselves, it's not about how beautiful we look. It's about the decisions we make and the situations we're in. And a lot of times women, of course, who is caught in that power wheel, in that power circle, they don't value who they are.
Right.
And so they don't have the strength. They can get the strength, but they don't have the strength in belief that they can live better and that they deserve, because they have been so devalued in that situation to their worth. You know, they feel worthless. Like, maybe I'm here because I deserve to be here, rather than knowing, no, you don't deserve to be there and you can live.
Right, right. Oh, God, yes, you can live. You can really live. And if you had a 13 or 14-year-old come to you and say that she's been trying to tell her mother what's happening to her as far as being sexually assaulted in that house, and the mother is punishing her because she doesn't believe her, how would you help that teenager?
Ooh, that's heavy. Now, by law, because I'm a clinical social worker, I have a master's degree in social work. By law, I'm going to report the mother.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
Because a child who is telling her mother that she's being sexually abused, it is the mother's responsibility to keep her safe.
Yes.
And so, unfortunately, though, there are so many stories where teenage girls tell their mother and the mother don't believe them.
Right.
And so that happens more, far as from my experience, and this is, I'm not trying to make a general statement, but there's a lot of cases where a teenage girl said, well, I told my mother and she got mad at me. And so it becomes not mother-daughter, but woman.
Yes, exactly. I would love for you to, when all this pandemic stuff is over with, to come to the Angel House to speak to our teenage group, because a lot of them are suffering from that.
Absolutely. And then they're afraid.
Yes. Well, one girl says she's not afraid. She's even admitted to us she's ready to kill her mother, so we had to call to get assistance to get her removed from that home. Not trying to take her away from her mother. We never try to take a child away from their parent. But
they'll give them some time to transition.
Yeah, but I didn't want that baby. She was 14. I sure didn't want her going to jail for killing her mother.
Oh, no, true. No. I meant if the mother don't decide, let me get out of this.
Yes.
You know, and protective services have to come in. I mean, I worked with child welfare and teenage girls for 7 years.
Okay.
So I know the system.
Yeah.
If they don't do that, then they'll remove the child. And then now the child is either in foster care with another family member.
Right.
And then if the mother don't make the transition quick enough, then she's, you know, a lot of times kids are placed in and out of homes because the parents are not keeping them safe.
Right.
And at the risk of losing their parental rights.
And please allow me to use another scenario for you.
Okay.
A 20-year-old male finally admitted he became gay or homosexual, whichever one you want to call it, is because his own uncle had been molesting him from a child, and he thought that it was okay for men to be with men. But he hasn't gotten counsel, so if we referred someone like that to you, would you be willing to help them?
If they want help.
Yes. Oh, he definitely wants to help.
If he wants help. I don't close the door on anyone that needs help. Even if I'm not the person to give him what he needs, I'll find somebody.
Right. That's exactly. Although the Angel House basically helps women because it was my daughter.
Right.
So that's why I do this women thing. But I never turn a male victim away. I turn them away from the Angel House, but I find somewhere else for them to get.
There are plenty of men who have been victimized.
Yes.
Who needs help.
Yes.
And for fear of being, you know, being called a homosexual or whatever may not ever tell the story.
Yes.
And it just shows up in their life over and over.
That's why I want this program, because I want not just female victims watching this program. I want men victims watching this program too, to know that they're loved and for what they went through in their past. We're sorry. We apologize for it. Nothing that we can ever do or say that can remove that from your life, but we can pray over you and ask that you be healed. So whereas these men are ashamed to stand up and say what they've been through, maybe they're watching the show and they can accept, what they went through.
Well, what they need to know is that it's not their fault.
Right.
But a lot of times children or teenagers growing up believe it's something that they did, that they were treated that way or had that experience. So once again, that's where self-affliction, self-sabotage, unhealthy relationships, criminal activity, all types of things occur as a result.
Yes.
So it's just a vicious cycle, if we don't help people or create safe spaces for people to be healed.
Okay.
And that's the issue, the safety.
Well, let me ask you, do you have your own office where people can come see you to talk about what they've gone through?
I do. I have a practice. It's called Authentic Life Coaching and Counseling Services. I'm housed in Southfield, but I haven't been in office, since COVID.
Pandemic,
so I do online sessions right now. And so I do counsel people suffering with depression, mental illness, anxiety, which is high right now. But I have counseled those who have been victims of sexual abuse as well.
And do you have a phone number that the people watching tonight can be able to reach out to you?
I do.
Can you give us that phone number?
That phone number is 313-784-4795. If I don't answer, you can leave a message or you can send me a text message and I will respond. I make my own appointments. And so if anyone needs help or needs someone to talk to, I do consultations first just to make sure so that I can see what your needs are and see if we're a good fit and put you on the schedule.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm asked again to give that telephone number.
Okay.
You can go ahead now. And
give it. That number is 313-784-4795. That's Authentic Life Coaching and Counseling Services.
Thank you so much for that. And I'll need to know this too, as far as victims, do you think it's a good idea, because I always tell everybody this, have a paper trail?
Absolutely. Okay. I think it's a good idea because, first of all, from my experience, usually the victim don't feel supported by anyone and no one believes them. For some reason, it's a belief that, they want to be there and, they downplay it.
Right.
I don't want to say overall the legal system downplay it, but I have heard of incidents where, hey, I went to the police or I did A, B, and C the right way and I didn't get the support I need. So you have to keep all your documentation, how many times you called the police, how many times you've gone to the police, who you spoke to, when, what time, what was their position. You got to keep a paper trail of everything because you have to be your own best advocate.
Right, right. And I also tell my victims too, in keeping that paper trail, you don't need to keep that paper trail out in the open.
Not
you
in the
need
open.
to keep your paper trail locked up somewhere safe, so nobody could get to it but you. But you need to tell your best friend or your mother where that paper trail is in case something does happen
and then
to
now,
you.
With the electronics, you can create the paper trail in your phone.
Yes, you can. Yes,
you can. Keep the file in your phone and email it to somebody.
Right.
So that they will have it. And so it's just real important to know that you have to fight for your life and be your own best advocate.
Right, right. And that's a good, I like those words, be your own best advocate.
You must.
Because keeping a paper trail, you are being your own best advocate. If you had to take that, if you had to take that abuser's life, you got that paper trail of every time you had to stand before a judge, or every time you went to a police station, or every time you were in a hospital, or every time your son or daughter had to try to help you. It's amazing what a paper trail will do for you.
Absolutely, it's proof. It's like in the field of social work, if we don't write it, that means it didn't happen. And so in any situation that you have to advocate for your life, you have to have a paper trail.
Yes. And see, I'm looking for a good attorney too. to help the Angel House with these victims. Just like I really don't believe that one of the victims had to sit in jail, you know, for something the judge told her to do, gave her directions to do. And she ended up taking that victim's life. I mean, that abuser's life, and she ended up doing time for that. I know that there's some type of attorney out here that would be able to help her. And just like all my victims that go through stuff, I want to have an attorney on board that will be able to help these victims because they're struggling, you know, and a lot of them don't want to leave the state because they don't want to be that far away from your mother or your father or your sister or your grandparents. But sometimes we have to leave everything behind to start afresh, and that might be the best thing for you. And in 6 or 7 months after you're stable, you can get back with your mother and your aunt, and they can come visit you where you're at. I'm not never telling you to return. Because we don't know what these victims will do, or what these abusers will do. So I think it's best for you to start your new life in another state and go on with your life, and your parents can come visit you. You know?
But you know, that's the fear of the unknown.
But we have to, God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So this is what I try to teach my victims. Don't be afraid to step out there on your own. God have you by your hand. God is going to lead you and protect you and guide you. He's going to order your steps.
I think that one of the struggles with that is that in those relationships they lose part of their faith or their belief. Because God, if you're who you are, then why is this happening to me? So even coming out, having to rebuild that spiritual relationship with God and understanding that He didn't give us a spirit of fear, but fear is a normal emotion. And so how do I confront that fear, you know, in a practical way so that I can move forward? Because fear is fear.
Yes, it is.
And it turns into anxiety.
And we are human. We are made of flesh, so
we are.
We have
to. So how do I grow the confidence and the courage to face that fear so that I can understand that this is just temporary because I'm trying to live. And so living has to become the priority more than anything.
Right. That's the main thing. You have got to continue to live. You have to be, you know how people say, I don't step in mess, I step around mess. That's the type of woman I want you to be, strong enough to step away from that battleground that you're in, because that battleground that you're punching and fighting and scratching, trying to save your own life or trying to save your children and protect you and your children from these situations, I need you to be strong enough. And I know that we're flesh and that we will have to learn to get over that fear, to learn to get over that eerie feelings that we have. We have to learn to get over them. But I want them to be strong enough to know, just walk.
Just walk.
Just walk.
And know who God made you to be. Because, see, sometimes we don't feel certain things, but we still have to know. And so even at your darkest time, I may not feel like I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, but I am. And so sometimes, even in being afraid, we have to do it anyway.
And even with mothers with children, I tell them, if you ain't going to save your own life for yourself, you save your life so you can be here to raise your children. You know, God gave those children to you, so you need to be able to raise those children. You don't need your mother or your sister or your best friend raising your children because that abuser took your life. I need you to be strong enough to say, God gave me these kids and I'm going to be here to raise them. I'm going to walk away from this situation. I'm going to believe and trust that God is going to guide me through this thing.
Absolutely. Because our kids are our responsibility and we should be their first teachers. And so if we're not, then we leave it up to everyone else to teach them. And so even in having to go to prison, if you're saving your life, to me, that's a courageous act. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, that's the only way, but that shows that you have some strength because you was fighting for your life. And so we have to also show our children what it means to fight for our life. And communicate with them what's going on with you. See, that's another thing. We don't communicate with our kids.
Children.
And then we leave the world to tell them what the true answers are. And then you're trying to reverse behavior when we have to sit our kids down and be honest with them. So it's domestic violence is, we know, generational, but I believe in breaking generational curses.
Yes, yes, yes.
So,
And I want people to know too, all my audience that's listening to me now, we say generational curses because it happened to our mothers and our grandmothers, our mothers, ourselves, and now our daughters or our sons. So what I want you to know that it just doesn't happen to low income families. Some families have never gone through abuse at all, and a young lady could be in her 20s, just graduated college, and what happened to her, she got with somebody she fell in love with at college. She ended up marrying him, but he came from an abusive family, so he ends up taking it out on her. Or maybe he never was in an abusive family, but he sees what his friends does to other women, and he want to be macho like them, so he takes it out on her too. All that stuff just happens. All kind of stuff happens. It's not just the generational curses, one family after another. We're not saying that.
right.
Yes, a lot of it is from generation to generation. And I've had a lady in her 80s that was just beat all of her life, but her children never saw it. So they didn't know what abuse was. But she ended up losing 2 daughters in her lifetime from abuse. And they never seen the abuse in their home at all. So we have to be on our P's and Q's. We have to research stuff. You know, if my daughter now, she's 30, she'll be 37, so if she comes to me and she says, Mama, all this research we've been doing about domestic violence, look, I didn't even know such and such happened. We research that stuff. We look into it. And my daughter is so into history, she wants to show me everything in her history. And she knows I'm not a big history person, but the things that she shows me causes me to look into it even deeper. And I see what she's saying. And people that was out there picking cotton, they wasn't getting abused by their husbands. They was getting abused by their masters.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's coming from everywhere.
So there's a history of violence, domestic violence, among us. You know what I mean? So the feelings of being powerless have existed for many years.
Yes.
I was looking at a documentary, this was some years ago, it was called The Residual Effects of Slavery, where because of abuse, you know, it created inferior identity because I gotta be worthless if I'm being beat all the time.
Right.
And so how do you grow up strong, or how do you even identify a healthy relationship when you've never been exposed to it? So we have to unlearn and learn.
Yes, yes.
And a lot of times in our culture too, we're so reactive or so emotionally driven that we think what feels good is good. And so we cannot make decisions off of what feels good, because he may make you feel good right now.
Right.
And then you wake up with a black eye the next day. I always remember the movie Sparkle, the old movie.
Yes.
And she was wooed by him because of the money, because she thought he was fine, and the mama tried to tell her. And she said, he's going to run you through the gutter. I just remember, she's like, Mama, you don't understand, because in her mind, she wanted to get out the ghetto. And because of it, she lost her life.
Yes.
And that might not have been a true story, but it's a true story for many.
Right.
And so she could not get away from it, and she ended up dying. And then he didn't kill her. She killed herself, drug addiction. And so there are many things that happen because we began coping and doing things to ourselves that causes a slow death rather than a physical.
Yes, yes.
And so it's very hard to bounce back. But you can.
Yes.
You can
bounce back.
You can
I
bounce
am
back.
a witness. I am a living testimony.
You can bounce
You
back.
can bounce back.
You can bounce back. And with the power of God, all things are possible.
Yes.
Even when it doesn't feel like it.
Yes. I'm trying to think of more things that I need to ask you. How do you feel about support groups for victims?
I think support groups are good because you won't feel alone. You will understand that other women have gone through it. It's an opportunity to share your story and own and accept your story.
Okay.
I always say there's glory in your story because once you accept your story, then you can learn something and give it to somebody else.
Right.
And so support groups are good because it's a release. It gives you an opportunity to grow, build other healthy relationships with other women, and then just to know that, hey, this is a method of support so that you'll get better.
Yes, yes. So I thank you for that because I was doing the support groups, and it still bothers me that we had to close our support groups due to the pandemic. Because a lot of people don't want to be on Zoom. They don't want to show their face. They're thinking other people are watching that Zoom. So I've had a problem with that. So my support groups are just depleted altogether right now because of that. But I have to respect people when they say I don't want to be on Zoom because I don't know who's showing who that they like the privacy of having a support group with 5 or 6 of us
Well, you
together.
know, they can change their name on the Zoom and they ain't even got to get on camera. So,
oh, good idea.
you know, you ain't got to put your real name on there if you're afraid. But talking is therapeutic.
Yes.
So without that, then it's hard to heal. You know, you got to help yourself.
Yeah.
So there's a way with Zoom privacy. You don't put your name on there and don't get on the camera, but y'all can just talk.
Okay.
And so then there's phone conferencing.
Yes.
Groups.
Yes. Now I still do that with a couple of them. We have our phone conferencing. But I do hear a lot of complaining, and even in myself, I can't wait till this is over so we can get back together because a lot of them do. They just need that hug, and they're used to being in that support group, and she can hug her and saying, "I didn't know you went through that. I dealt with that at a time in my life too," and they exchange phone numbers. They become friends. They strengthen each other. They help build each other up. So I think all that is good from the support groups. So. Yeah.
You definitely Zoom, and during this time, you know, not having the physical touch has been really difficult. But I got to be honest, I've met so many people during Zoom and during the pandemic than I probably would have ever met any otherwise. Just being open.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes we're talking about getting back to what was normal. Well, what that we probably won't ever get all the way back there. So, you know, we have to kind of have balance. It may have to be some on Zoom and some face to face.
Yes.
Just to, you know, create that balance.
Yeah. Well, you know, too, I found out a lot, too, with that Zoom. I thought it was a good thing because some of my victims that have met each other on Zoom, they're supporting each other now.
Because you can create little avatars. You can do anything.
Yeah. But they're in different states. So they have, and I'm like, wow, I'm really doing this from state to state. But they Zoom in together, they talk to each other, and then they end up exchanging phone numbers and keeping each other built up. So I think that's a good thing. Florida, California, Arkansas. You know, I'm just like, wow, okay. Hey, but that's my thing. I want to help victims all over the world, not just one place.
And you will.
Yes.
And you are.
Yes. Yes.
And that lawyer you have not because you ask not. They're coming.
Yes. I thank you.
They coming. Everything you need.
I thank you. I really thank you.
Yes. I'm so sorry. Look at Keith.
No, that's quite all right. Like I say, we talked about how ministry can help victims. And do you think it's good for advocates of domestic violence to go? What are your thoughts about them speaking to elementary school students?
Well, the thing about that, they will have to get permission.
We do.
Oh, yeah. As young as you can because they grown these days. They get into relationships early. And then high schoolers are having an increase in domestic violence relationships.
Yes.
And so that it doesn't because he hit me don't mean he liked me. You know what I mean? But also, again, mental illness is impacting our youth.
Yes.
And so I've seen, working in the schools, I've seen it, you know, where a couple fighting each other, or I've seen it where it's you talking to my boyfriend. So the girl, it's not just opposite sex that's considered domestic violence.
Yes.
When two girls is fighting, and that's domestic violence.
Oh, yes, it is.
And so it's was running rampant.
You know, they say that that's not domestic violence, that's bullying. Bullying is a form of violence.
It is. It's emotional abuse.
Yes.
It is emotional abuse, which it's hard to recover from.
Yeah, I've had a teenager in high school change her schools without even her parents
Change
knowing that.
schools,
Because,
increase in suicide
mm-hmm,
attempts, inability to learn
mm-hmm,
because the environment
yeah,
is stressful
yes,
and unsafe. You
mm-hmm,
can't learn in an unsafe environment.
right, right. Yeah. And my oldest child, she always tells me, Mama, I was bullied all through school.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it I knew about, some of it I found out when she was grown.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody knew Karen loved her baby, so maybe that's why I didn't know about a lot of it.
And then and this is the story I tell. I was tall and was bullied because I was tall.
Yeah.
I was always taller than everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember this one girl just was bullying me, and my father made me fight her.
Mm.
He came up to the school like, "You gonna fight her today?"
Mm-mm.
So we were taught, you don't let nobody say or do nothing to you, because if you come home crying, then what? I'm gonna whoop you.
Mm-hmm.
So, we grew up thinking that that's the only way out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, but now, of course, it has escalated to more than I remember growing up.
Yeah, and these kids are not just fighting with their fists; they're fighting with weapons.
That's what I mean.
Serious
That's
weapons.
what I mean.
Yeah.
And so it's really dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen girls be abused in the high school and just cannot leave him alone,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what you say or do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's psychological.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
mental, that's
Mm-hmm.
emotional.
Yes, it is.
And so we have to heal them from the inside out.
Right. And sometimes that's a hard job.
Oh, it is a hard job.
Yeah. And I'm going to talk about myself real quick, and you give your feedback on it. But I held guilt for a long time because once I divorced my children's father, I didn't have a man over my children.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it was safe.
Mm-hmm.
But after I lost my daughter, I held this guilt that maybe I should have put a man in their life to teach them how a woman should be treated. And maybe my daughter wouldn't have been laying in that casket because I can tell them how a woman should be treated, but I couldn't show them how a man should treat a woman about taking her out on dates or opening up the doors and stuff. For her, I can tell her that, but they didn't see that.
Mm-hmm.
Their father wasn't in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I thought because I left when they were 4 and 7 that they would never have to deal with domestic violence
Mm-hmm.
at all.
Mm-hmm.
That they would get a man that would treat them like royalty because I prayed about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I held that for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
that it was my fault that they didn't know how to look for a man
Mm-hmm.
that knows how to treat a woman. They had my brother, my younger brother, they had their uncle, but that wasn't, they didn't live with us.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like, how are they going to know how a man is supposed to treat them? And then after losing her, she was 27, but I really, took that on. She's gone because I didn't teach her or have somebody in her life to teach her.
that was the enemy trying to take you out.
Yes.
Because as rough as that was, and as hard as it may be to accept, our kids make their own decisions.
Right, believe me.
And it's hard for a mother
Yes.
anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I know about Satan, though, is he will use your heart
Yes.
so that you kill yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I sense that there's some more healing that you need to do.
Oh,
for
yes.
you.
Oh, yes.
Because of course was not your fault.
Yes.
It's a good thing not to have a man over your kids.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Oh, believe me. Just like I tell these girls, he just got out of jail. He got a tether on. You know nothing about him, and he lived with you.
Listen, when I got divorced after 15 years. My daughter was 12. I said, I can't. Even though I wanted somebody, the thought of a man being in my house and he just peek at my daughter drove me crazy.
Yes.
So I just decided to see her through high school, and if I did anything, it wouldn't be around her, and
Yes.
nobody know her, and have to see who she is, because people are crazy.
Yes.
And we've had examples of this, and being impulsive in relationships, and how detrimental it is for your children.
Yes, but I'm glad you're saying that because my own brother, he served 17 years in prison because he was a child molester. And he molested my oldest niece. And although it wasn't his child, we loved that girl like it was our
Absolutely.
child. And I mean, and to find out he had been molesting her from ages 5 to 14, when it all came out in the open, we had a close group of friends. After that happened, everybody scattered. Everybody was afraid to let people come around their children.
I didn't. My mind said, and it probably was me being healthy. Lord, wait, me and this thing. Where is this?
It's behind here. Yeah.
Jesus.
We're sorry.
In my head, if a man is in my house and he see my daughter, who's also tall and beautiful and thin, who he gonna look at? So in my mind, he was gonna automatically look at her. So let me just not do it. You know, just because it wasn't worth the risk.
Right.
And then I needed to focus on getting her through high school, having recently been divorced, and not just jump back into something.
Right.
And, you know, so we have to do what we have to do for our kids, because a lot of times, even counseling children, a parent will say, "Well, fix my kid." Well, the apple don't fall far from the tree. That is just the truth.
Yes.
And people don't want to hear the truth.
Yes,
now,
ma'am.
I do know kids do some things because of peer pressure.
Yes.
Because peer pressure is a high influencer. But at some point, you got to look and say, what have I done or did not do that has impacted my children?
Yes. Yes.
And that's hard to do because while we're working, we feeding them, we're doing all of these other things, over compensating in the financial area and missing the emotional stability of their kids.
Yes.
But we can only give what we have.
Right. And that's another thing, too. Can you talk about other forms of abuse? Because a lot of people think it's just physical. And I try to tell them every week, it's not just physical.
It's not.
It's emotional.
It's emotional abuse. It's medical abuse now. It's all types of abuse that impacts a child's well-being overall. So if you are in a relationship that's not abusive, but you're not talking to your kids, not feeding them, doing the things that a parent should do, it's considered neglect. And you may not think so because they have a roof over their head or you buying them gym shoes. But abuse is abuse. And so, but a lot of times parents have been abused themselves emotionally.
Exactly.
And so the tough love, that's how I grew up, tough love. Like, look, you hungry? Go in there and eat what's in there or sit down somewhere. You know, it wasn't no choices like it is now.
Yeah. Oh.
And so there are other forms of abuse that impact the psyche of a child in child rearing. So we have to learn again how to communicate, even if we're having a rough day. I mean, parenting is difficult.
Yes,
so it ain't like a cakewalk. But hey, I've learned to communicate with my children.
Yes.
You know, going through divorce. Look, let me sit down and talk to y'all because I'm not feeling good right now. And so to pretend, it's not teaching real life.
Right.
And so I think teaching more of the truth of what life is very helpful.
Yes. Yes.
Because then they're going to find out somewhere.
Yeah. And that's why I want to stress too, parents, please don't pretend around your kids. We have to tell them, you know, this happened because of such and such. And I don't want you to live this type of life because I've already experienced it. You know, a lot of the kids, they're going to be hard-headed. They're not going to want to listen to you because they're 14, 15. They think, you don't know everything, mama, but they don't know what you've been through unless you tell them. You know, a lot of them want to dip and dab in the weed and the cigarettes and the alcohol and stuff, but you can't stop them from doing that, but you can tell them, you know, what the outcome of it will be. You can become an alcoholic, you can become a drug addict, but you don't need to keep that stuff silent from your children. You need to speak to them about it. And people laugh at me, but I used to take my daughters on Woodward when we had nothing to do. It was hot outside. I need you to know what a hooker looks like. I need you to know what a crackhead looks like. You see these people walking down the street, scratching, itching, and digging. You know, they're doing this because of the drugs that they're on. And my children know their father was a drug abuser. So I tell them, you don't, and my children, they used to just have me laughing all the time. How did you marry such an ugly man? I said, stop saying that. That's your father.
Kids will say, like, where you
your
get him
father.
from?
And what? Thank God I look like you, but I tell my oldest daughter all the time, you look just like your father. It took her to get in her 30s to start looking like her mother.
Well, my daughter looked just like her dad.
So they just tickle me with that. But and then I had even had his sister at one time say, oh, our kids going to be drug addicts and junkies. I rebuke that in the name of Jesus. But Karen, that's how our husbands are. No, I rebuke that. My kids were not no druggies and drunk. And no, I brought them up in the church. So even if they didn't come out living like the church, they know what they was brought up in. And that deceased daughter of mine, she still tells me, well, she don't still tell me, God, please, but she used to always tell me, Mama, the Bible said, train a child in the way they should go. If we depart, we're going to return. So you stop worrying about us. You did your job as a parent. And although she would tell me that, it took me for her to be gone to really accept that.
Yeah. It's hard. It's
Yes.
hard. My daughter go to the store and she gone too long. I'm like,
Beep, 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 beep.
that's just a mother's nature, but at
Yes.
the same time, we have to pray and we can't allow our fears to fall upon them.
Yes.
You know, my daughter is way more free than I am. Like, Mom, that's you, you know.
I'm so glad you said that because my daughter was 30 when her sister was 27 and passed away. But something happened because once she was murdered and gone, and I was afraid for my daughter to go anywhere. I always wanted to text her, and she had to tell me, Mama, I'm not Tracy, let it go.
Yeah.
Oh, let it go. You know, but I mean, it was like overprotection came over me all again, like she was 3 and 4 years old.
Well, that's because that was trauma.
Yeah, it was a heavy trauma.
Yeah, that was trauma. So that's what trauma does. So that's not.
I mean, but she was 30, and I'm telling you, I was treating her like she was 4 or 5. I didn't want her out of my sight.
Right.
You know, so,
Right.
or we don't live in the same state, so, you know, she's out of my sight now. But although we're in totally different states, I've learned to get over there, but I'm still calling her and texting her, you know, and I probably get on her nerves. And I ask God to help me with that. I really do, because she has to live her life.
Yeah. Well, do you date now?
No, I don't want a husband.
I ain't say husband.
I don't want a date. I want Jesus as my boyfriend.
Well, he can't be that.
Well, I take him.
He cannot
But
be
listen, I don't want no more heartaches, no more
You
pain.
ain't gotta have heartache.
I
You
don't
gotta
want.
have heartache. You can have fun.
No, I don't even want the fun. I even dated a guy, but he, you know, they don't tell you they're in a serious relationship with somebody else. I
Then you
don't
go
have
to the
time
next
for that. No, I'm gonna relax and love Jesus and go on.
Okay.
And you know, the Bible said it's all right for me to be single.
It is.
Yes, the Bible says it's all right for me to
It
be
says
single.
it's better than to be single than anything
There it is.
else.
There it is. So let me be single and serve the Lord and be happy and be celibate as long as I want to be. As long as I want to be.
I surrender.
I love people being married. It's just not for me.
I listen. I've been married before. I understand.
It's
But
good
you
for people to be in relationships, but I don't want one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Long as it's not because of what you've been through.
Oh, no. It's not because of what I've been through. Now, I tell you, I had the worst marriage anybody could ever ask for. I walked around with black eyes and busted lips and
But that's
bloody
just
nose.
not your focus right
No,
now.
no. And I've been divorced since 1991.
Oh.
Okay. So, no. I did date. I dated somebody from the time my baby was in 7th grade to the time she graduated high school. And that's not for me.
Okay. I understand. It is rough.
It's not for me. Because I'm not telling a grown man what he should and should not do.
Absolutely not.
You know. So, no. Leave me alone. Let me be happy. Doing my Bible study, helping these victims as much as I can help them. And please don't think I'm gay because I'm not gay. I love men, but no, thank you. No, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you. I just let me be Karen. And loving Jesus, serving Jesus, because I'm out here to help any and everybody I can.
I like that. Let me be Karen.
Yes.
That has a ring.
Yes.
Okay. I understand.
Okay. Okay. But now I'm going to thank you for being on my show.
Absolutely.
And I am going to ask you to take the time to pray us out of here.
Okay. Eternal God, our Father, we thank you. We thank you for Karen and her mission. We thank you for the power that you have given her, the courage that you've given her, in honor of her daughter to save thousands, millions of women across the world.
Yes.
We're grateful for this opportunity to talk and discuss. Hopefully, God, it has healed someone or given someone an opportunity to take another look or to make a decision. We're grateful that you've given us another chance to do this. We're grateful and know that we walk in victory based upon who you are and what you say we can have. You said that we can have greater things than you. And so, God, we are claiming victory over Karen's Next. We're claiming victory over Angel House. We're claiming victory over this show, that it reach people miles and miles and miles away, so that each week the numbers, the census increase, but not just to watch, but financially. We claim victory over the people who will pour financially into this ministry, who will pour so that all of her needs are met, so that she will no longer have to ask every week because she will have it. So we just thank that you will keep her healthy, keep her strong, and that this show will continue to be a blessing. So we're just honored right now, and any woman who is suffering right now, we ask God that you will touch them and make a way out of no way, that any family that is struggling or grieving due to the loss of someone due to domestic violence, Lord, that you will heal their hearts. And we ask that you protect all of the children that may be exposed. So, God, we ask you for these things in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, audience, for watching. And remember, we're here every Tuesday on Confessions at 7 p.m. Tell all your family, friends, and loved ones to watch it. If it doesn't help them, it can help somebody else. God bless, and see you next Tuesday.